Welcome everyone to our webinar today about the introduction of SAP Green Token. We hope that you will find this session very interesting, and we invite you to share any questions that you have with us directly in the chat so that we can pick them up either directly during the presentation or afterwards. There's also time reserved that we can go through your questions in detail. A quick introduction of myself. As May already said, I'm the global lead at Westernacher for the area of business planning analytics. I have a business background, worked more than 10 years in finance and controlling. And well, for me, sustainability is also a lot about data. And that's why I'm focusing a lot on sustainability aspects and sustainability analytics lately. And today I have with me Viraj. Viraj, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. My name is Viraj. I worked in the SAP data and analytics field for more than 16 years now. And I'm interested personally in sustainability and exploring various products by SAP in this field together with Mark. And we are thrilled to have you all here for this session today.
Thank you. So perhaps before we start, just a quick glance on who Westernacher is, if you did not have the chance yet to work with us. We are meanwhile 55 years old, founded in 1969 in Karlsruhe, are more than 1,000 people strong meanwhile across the globe. So you will find us in Europe, Americas, as well as in Asia. And since 2021, we are net zero. So we really also do focus as a company on providing sustainable actions, but of course also supporting our customers in being sustainable. And here we combine our process expertise that goes across the whole supply chain end to end, also looking at the latest innovations in sustainability and how we can leverage these actions that our customers are doing. Now, why are we at all talking? I think it's pretty obvious that right now the world is at a tipping point with regards to sustainability, and that our pretty consumption-based economy, and with consumption also comes waste, there is something that is needed to change, and where we now need to think carefully how we interact with the world and the sustainability. We brought in some facts that I think are very interesting and definitely made me thinking about, if you think then less than 9% of all the materials that we use each year are recycled. I think that is already something very disturbing. Thinking about microplastic, that this now already reaches bodies, human bodies, and that we also have out of this waste, for example, a lot of biodiversity loss, and also the creation of and production of all these materials, products, comes certainly with a lot of greenhouse gas emissions that also do not positively impact our environment. And if we look at this, certainly out of these problems, there are actions that derive from that. We in Germany, for example, we see that people go out on the streets, there are protests. So customers and consumers really change their behavior. They look for sustainable products, looking for recycled materials. We see that regulations are picking up. The European Union is certainly pushing heavily on this, looking at deforestation, on reporting of sustainability KPIs, and also investors or partners in the supply chain are looking for sustainable companies to work with. because they also feel naturally the pressure and only want to consume them from vendors that are equally on this road to sustainability. And one fact that I found very interesting is actually that more than 700 billion US dollars could be saved if we look more on the material cost savings in the consumer industries. There are certainly very interesting facts, and out of this come, on the one hand, challenges, how to deal with this, but also business opportunities. On the one hand, the challenge everyone faces is, well, how to comply to all these new regulations, to these new laws, where to get all this data from. On the other hand, the major business opportunity that you have is that being a first mover on creating this transparency, on becoming more sustainable, you attract more customers and grow your business. And that is certainly something worthwhile to look into. If we now make a bit the bridge to, well, what does this now mean for my supply chain? We certainly need to see that the supply chain at the moment or so far did not offer that much of transparency with regards to sustainability. So companies now, with all these new regulations, have been struggling heavily to come up with reporting schemes for greenhouse gas protocol emissions, yeah, and also where the sources of materials are. And as this move now from not so sustainable products and materials to sustainable products is going on, customers and consumers are asking also for this information. So where is this coming from? Okay, I see here now a bottle, or I personally, for example, I have a backpack where it says like, okay, 50% of this backpack is coming from recycled plastic. And now as a consumer, I could say, okay, that is good to hear, but probably I'm also interested, where exactly is this coming from? Is this just like a marketing slogan, or can this company actually prove that this is happening? The same holds true for energy. Yeah, where is energy coming from? In Europe, we see these discussions like the German government saying like, no, we want to build only sustainable sources of energy. Yeah, solar energy, wind energy. In France, the discussion is a bit different. Here, atomic power is seen also as sustainable. And now taking this as a German consumer, where also the German government has decided that atomic power is not sustainable, it might make a change and might be very interesting to know, okay, that much of energy that was needed to produce this product is actually coming from this or that data energy source, yeah, and coming, for example, from atomic power. The same holds true for other products, yeah. We know that forests have significantly been reduced over time and deforested, yeah. If you look to Southern America, we are talking about how much rainforest is there still, yeah. Some companies, or if you want to outmatch your CO2 emissions, you can opt in and buy land, so to say, to plant new trees. But as a consumer, I want perhaps to make sure that what I'm now consuming is not coming from deforestation, yeah? Palm oil, wood, leather, these kind of things. So here there is a clear need that companies need to provide this transparency. And actually, this is something that companies so far have not been prepared for. And with this, companies now need to look into their supply chains and really get a better understanding what raw materials they are consuming, yeah, which vendors you need to select to become more sustainable. What does this have as an impact on your cost structure? Because obviously, if you want to be more sustainable, it will in many cases come with higher cost. How do you set up your production line? Yeah, it's easy to just consume and produce your products as you've done before, but perhaps you can change production lines so that they do not produce as much, consume as much energy, do not run the whole time, perhaps also without being on load, and also see where you can reduce material input to become more sustainable. And these are questions that SAP Green Token tries to answer to some extent. And therefore, we are really happy to share now this webinar with you, explaining how SAP Green Token can create transparency and give you the means as companies to explain this reporting requirements to your customers or to the end consumer. And with that, I would like to hand over to Viraj.
Thank you, Mark. That was a really good context of the challenges that we see in this space and how the companies and different stakeholders are reacting to these different changing circumstances. So what is SAP Green Token? And that's a really catchy name for a new product, but what does it actually do and what does it stand for? So this is a software as a service solution. So and it's completely cloud-based, so you don't need any hardware procurement needed for this. And it allows companies to transition to using more and more sustainable raw materials in their processes. And how does it do this? So there are various ways or chain of custody models that you can implement or model using Green Token. And it combines various different principles such as tokenization and blockchain. And what it does is allows a organization to capture various sustainability certificates and documents and make this data transparent in their own supply chain, but also to their customers and other companies in the whole network, if the company chooses to make this information visible. So it provides a way to prove the sustainability claims by companies. So this is built on a blockchain ledger, which is immutable, so you cannot tamper with the numbers that are posted on the blockchain. And this results in a certain level of trust and auditability in the data. And this is also, in a way, very much accessible to all the organizations who want to use this solution. So this is completely a standalone product from SAP, and you can integrate this with SAP ERP systems, but you could also integrate it with other systems via generic APIs that are available. Now, how does Green Token enable this kind of traceability in the materials? So in a nutshell, the processes can be divided into 3 steps. So we have the inbound flows where the materials come into the organization. And this is where all of the sustainability attributes are captured at this early stage. Once we have the raw materials in, Green Token can help you trace how much of that stock is certified quantity versus conventional quantity. And after this point, it can go through many different steps. So it could be transferred from, let's say, a DC to a production plant. It can go through a conversion process to go from a raw material to a finished product. And then it can be used to fulfill customer orders. And the information that was captured at the inbound stage is fully available throughout all of these steps, so that we can trace each and every token to its source. And this is how we can get this end-to-end traceability for the raw materials. So let's have a bit of a look behind how Green Token is achieving this functionality. And this is combining various principles in one single product. So the first is tokenization. Tokenization basically refers to creating like a digital twin of your physical quantities and having all of these attributes really tagged and attached to that digital twin. And this is what allows us to trace all of those attributes throughout the supply chain. The chain of custody is basically a method of accounting where we can track a material's provenance from the very first company that that originated the product and throughout all of the processing that it goes through. And the third aspect is the blockchain, and this is where Green Token is using a Ethereum backbone based blockchain to really capture all of these tokens in the blockchain, and that gives a certain level of auditability that companies cannot just edit the data, and all of the data can be traced back to where it originated. And this makes it easier for companies to prove the sustainability claims that they are making about their products. And as a solution, Green Token tries to give you an open platform to basically model and target different compliances that you might need in that industry. So for example, European deforestation regulations, the EUDR is something that's coming up by end of this year, making it mandatory for certain types of products to have all of this these attributes being captured. And this can also work with other types of certifications such as ISCC, Red Cert, and so on. And let's see how these different principles are kind of looking in the sense of the Green Token solution. So here you see the tokenization, where we have a token example here, which is a data that is related to plastic waste as a material. There's a quantity associated with it, there's a certification or a reference number associated with it, and different attributes like the producer, the source, and the origin, and so on. And then you have the blockchain, where these blocks of tokens are written to the blockchain in a distributed network. So this forms the basis of the trust and auditability factor. And then you have this mass balance principle, which is basically accounting for how much has come in and how much has gone out, and making sure that you cannot have, you cannot claim more quantity of sustainably produced goods than the raw materials that you brought in. So there's no, so it inherently prevents double counting, and this also helps establish this trust factor. So let's maybe try and understand this with an example. In this case, let's look at a plastic packaging industry where the plastic can come from various different sources. So you have the post-consumer sources, which is recycled plastic. You could have recycled plastic coming in from post-industrial sources, and you could have virgin plastic created from fossil fuels. And this goes through the different conversion processes within the organization to convert all of these mixed raw materials into the final products. And this is where Green Token can help us with this traceability to say that based on the inbound quantities, we can say how much of the outbound can be tagged as recycled plastic versus conventional plastic. And to go a bit deeper into how this works, and again, we will not go into all the technical details, but here we see the first step, which is the inbound of the raw materials. And here we can have this raw material coming in from various different sources. Some are sustainable sources, some are conventional sources, and this is all going into one big pile, literally and figuratively. And here you have this mixing and commingling of the materials. And most traditional systems, they basically lose track of the sustainability attributes at this stage. Once everything is mixed into one big pile, you lose the traceability. And this is where Green Token can really help us, where the tokens are linked to each and every quantity of the material. And even when you put them through different production processes, the tokens get converted from let's say a raw material token to a finished good token. And here you could also model any let's say wastage or yield loss that happens during the production process. And then on the output side, you have the finished goods that are then can be tracked as to how much recycled plastic was used in the manufacture of those goods. And this is what is happening from a business process perspective. But on the blockchain, what happens is each time a inbound transaction is created, a token is minted or generated. And if the inbound happened from a customer who is also on Green Token, then the tokens would simply be transferred instead of generating new tokens. And then within the blockchain, there are different wallets. So you have a storage and handling wallet that's keeping track of all your inbound stock. Then you have your production wallet that keeps track of all the conversions and so on. And then you have your marketing and end customer wallets where the outbound flow is modeled, and you can assign the tokens to different orders. And here again, the tokens would either get retired from the network or they would get transferred to the customer, depending on the customer is on Green Token or not. So as a solution, you can use this in a standalone way, or you could also use this in a network linked kind of a way where you have your entire supply chain is also onboarded on Green Token to have this end-to-end visibility. So the next part is, most of the customers who are using SAP ERP systems are obviously interested in knowing how this tool can work with their existing systems. And this is basically a process flow that we would also see in the demo. So within your ERP system, you have the sales forecasting process. This is an input to the raw material planning and that leads to procurement, and you have your purchase orders, and then the supplier eventually delivers the goods. So at this stage, when you are receiving the delivery, this is when the tokens are either received or generated. Then you have intra-company movement. So if you have multiple plants, multiple DCs, and you have the stock moving from one place to another, you can also model this. And then you have the production orders, manufacturing orders in the ERP system that can then trigger the token conversions. And here the chain of custody principle comes into picture, and mass balance accounting kind of keeps track of always the input equals output principle. And then you have last step as is the fulfillment, which is the orders that are pending to be fulfilled can then be fulfilled from this stock, and this then also triggers a transfer of the tokens or the retiring of the tokens. The interface to ERP is something that works through APIs or various different ways. So there is open OData APIs are available, and there is also native integration with SAP S/4HANA that's in the works. And for any other system, you could also use generic APIs to connect to Green Token. So it's while it works well with SAP ERP, it can work with any other systems as well. And throughout all of this processes is this whole backbone of the blockchain and auditability. And you can use Green Token to download various different reports and audit related information that will make it easier to comply with different regulations and so on. And lastly, so before we jump into the demo, we just wanted to recap, what's the value that Green Token is offering, and why even bother switching to using sustainable raw materials. So we can look at this from various different angles, and this is really what's happening, and Mark touched upon some of these aspects in his introduction. But one main reason is that you can charge a premium for products that are sustainably produced, and up to 40% more can be gained from using sustainably sourced materials. The consumers are also preferring to buy products that are sustainable. So again, there is this clear trend, and if you want to be competitive, if you want do not want a competitor to offer a sustainable product that completely makes eats out the market share, then organizations need to start thinking about switching to the sustainable products. Investors are taking into consideration more and more the ESG factors. Employees as well prefer to work for organizations that they believe are making a positive impact on society and the planet. And the last is the regulations. So in many jurisdictions, regulations are coming up that mandate a lot of these, let's say, transparency and traceability in the data. And a good example is the European deforestation regulation, which is going to hit end of this year, being applicable to all the small and medium companies as well, which are into certain industries. So there are really good reasons to switch to certified sustainable materials, and Green Token is certainly a tool that you can explore for this particular requirement. And with this background, we will now jump into a demo.
Hello, and welcome to a demo of SAP Green Token. SAP Green Token is a software as a service platform that helps companies transition to sustainable materials. It does so by providing end-to-end transparency of the sustainable or certified materials throughout a supply chain and helping companies with their compliance needs for different international certification standards such as ISCC and UDR. Green Token does this using several different principles. The first one is tokenization. Every time a sustainable or certified material enters the Green Token network, new green tokens are minted or created. These tokens can then be transferred from one location to another within a company, or they could be converted from raw materials to finished goods. And when the materials are sold to the final customers, the tokens get transferred along with the order. If the customer is not on the Green Token network, then the tokens retire. And this ensures that the tokens cannot be double counted, and this adds a level of trust and auditability to the entire supply chain data. Green Token uses the blockchain technology to make sure that the transactions that are recorded, the creations, the conversions, and the transfers of the tokens are completely immutable and can be trusted. So with that background, let's jump into the demo. When we first log into the Green Token screen, we are greeted with this dashboard. On the left-hand side, we see an inventory of the key materials that we are tracking, which includes the raw materials that we are procuring, as well as the finished products that we're making. In the middle, we see the mass balance, and this is where we can find out how much of certified sustainable materials we have as opposed to conventional stock. In this example, we are looking at the plastic in a chemical industry. The raw plastic can either be sourced from recycled sources, or it could be sourced from fossil fuels, in which case it's the conventional kind, and recycled would be the certified sustainable kind. This principle can apply to any different scenario, such as agricultural products produced without deforestation could be the sustainable side, and the ones which require deforestation would be the conventional one. We can also have energy-related scenarios, such as clean energy being the sustainable side and the regular energy from fossil fuels being the conventional kind. So let's go into the details. If I scroll down, we can see the aggregated balance across different time periods. On the right-hand side, we see some pending requests, and we will get to this later. Before starting with the process, let's have a look at the main configuration areas. In the system section, we can see the company details page, and this is where the company ID can be found. And here we can configure which materials are being supplied by this company. We can also maintain partners, and partners could be vendors or customers. They can be created using a global address book of existing Green Token customers, or added as an offline partner if they don't use Green Token. We can also maintain conversion recipes in Green Token, and these indicate how to convert a raw material into a finished good. In this case, we have defined 1,000 metric tons of raw plastic yields us 995 metric tons of the 1 liter plastic bottle product. There is usually a certain amount of yield loss in the manufacturing process, and that can be modeled here. The next step is getting data into Green Token, and this can be done in two ways. One is by using CSV files, or by integrating with an ERP system such as S/4HANA. When we integrate with an ERP system, many of the process steps that we are going to look at now can be completely automated. For example, a goods receipt from a vendor could trigger the transfer creation of new tokens. A sales order could trigger the addition of pending orders, and a fulfillment or goods issue could trigger the fulfillment a manufacturing process. So a production order or a process order could trigger the conversions from raw material tokens to finished good. But in this demo, we're going to look at all of these steps in a manual way to be able to visualize how the flow works. Let's start with the inquiries. And this is where we can select material at the top right and see all of the inquiries that we have for that material. You can select a particular request and see all of the details here. And in this case, this customer has requested 70% of the quantity to be certified out of a total 20 metric tons. We can allocate a certain number of tokens for this particular request. But before we do that, let's make sure that we have enough raw materials. This is the inbound screen, and this is where we can track all of our inbound goods receipts. The quantity is differentiated between the certified quantity versus the conventional quantity. We have details like the vendor, the transaction, and the ticket reference, and so on. The declaration files that prove the certifications of a sustainable material can directly be uploaded in the system or can be imported via the integration with ERP. On the top right, we see the available balance, both certified balance and the conventional balance for this particular raw material. The next step is conversions. This is where we can model the production process. Normally, a production order would trigger this, but we can also trigger this manually. And let's produce 50 metric tons of the 2-liter bottle. Here we can choose what distribution we want. Do we want to use any of the sustainable materials that we have, and in what proportion? So let's use a 70% certified stock, and the rest would be conventional. Let's give this a new ID. So let's say this is the 2-liter bottle batch with a 70-30 ratio. Let's give it a unique number. At the bottom, we can see a preview. Once we click on the process material button, we get a quick summary of what's going to happen. So this step will convert 50 quantities of the raw material, out of which 35 is the certified quantity, into the 2-liter bottle product. And out of the output, we will have 35 metric tons of certified sustainable product and 15 metric tons of conventional. So let's confirm the selection and run the conversion. So this is now done. The tokens are now converted from the raw material side to the finished product side, and we can see the details here. Once we have some stock, let's look at the pending orders that we could also see in the overview screen. Here we can select a material, and we can choose to fulfill all of the orders if we have the required stock, or we could select only certain orders and choose to fulfill those. In this case, we want to fulfill a particular order, but we can here select a different quantity of sustainable stock that we use to fulfill this. So in this case, the total quantity requested is 20. We can use 10 to fulfill this, in which case the remaining 10 would be taken from the conventional stock. So let's fulfill this order. And now we see that the certified balance and the conventional balance has reduced by 10. Let's take another order, perhaps this one, and let's fulfill this with the entire quantity being the certified quantity. So we can click on this button and process that. And again, just to remind, this is a visual representation, a manual way of fulfilling the orders from Green Token. In a ERP integration scenario, this would all be automated. In the next screen, we can look at the order history. So we can see the status of the different orders, how much of the quantity was part of the order, how much of the certified balance was used to fulfill those orders. In this case, we saw that we used only 10 of the sustainable product, and the remaining was the conventional one. In the next screen, we can see the details of all of the transactions that have happened. We can download this in a CSV file, but we can also focus on a particular material. Let's say, in this case, the raw material. We see all of the inbound transactions and all the consumptions transactions. If you look at a finished product, we see the conversions, the outbound, and so on. So this is the process. Let's have a look at some reporting. So under the track and trace section, we have the chain of custody screen. Here we can choose a particular material and drill deeper to see how this was made. So this was the finished product, which was made using raw plastic. We can see the quantities involved. And if we drill down further, we get the vendor level information to see that from which vendor did we get the certified quantity and from which vendor we got the conventional quantity. This could also be the same vendor providing a mix of both. If we click on the show graph button, we see a visual representation of this flow, which is quite easy to interpret. And this is a simple example, but you can imagine a supply chain that has various different companies, various different steps in the supply chain, and this can get quite complicated. And this is one way we can see visually the traceability of the sustainable materials coming in from the supplier and down to the finished product that we manufactured. If the suppliers or the customers are also on Green Token, this network diagram can show us the part before and the part after if our suppliers choose to share that information with us. In addition to the chain of custody, we have a number of reports available. So we can use these reports for getting data out of Green Token, and we can also use them to support any audits. And the next section, which is quite important, is the catalog. And this is where we can define the different materials. So the main raw material, the main finished products, and when we can assign different attributes to the materials, and Green Token provides a number of standard attributes that are required for various different certifications, such as the ISCC and the EUDR. And this makes it easy to make sure we have all the required fields to capture the sustainability or the certified information in the Green Token system. We can see all of these pre-built attributes here. We can click on them to find out more details, and we can also choose the level of visibility that we want to use. Should these be only accessible within our organization, or should they be shared with all the partners in the network? We can also define custom attributes that we might need. And as you can see, we have attributes that cover various different internationally recognized standards and frameworks, such as the ISCC and the EUDR, which is the European Deforestation. If we go back to the overview screen, we can see that the numbers have changed. So the inventory gets updated anytime we do a transaction in Green Token, whether it's inbound, whether it's conversion, or outbound. I hope this demo gave you a quick insight into what Green Token looks like. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Viraj, for this. I hope you got a good overview now what SAP Green Token is about. And I see we also have questions in the chat, which we now would like to answer. So if you have more questions, please jump in. I've seen there's a question with regards to tracking of CO2 emissions, Scope 3 emissions, downstream transportation. I think here is a small misunderstanding because there are follow-up questions. Green Token as a tool basically only serves for tracking the certifications and putting them into the digital twin across your supply chain. So let's say if you have a certificate or some auditing report on the CO2 emissions, you can attach these to your individual transaction, to your transport request, and then have this in your blockchain secured so that it cannot be changed, and then can go on to your customer or to the end consumer. This is possible. Green token is not a solution that does for you the CO2 calculation itself. If you're looking for this, there are basically different options. Option one is you use SAP Product Footprint Management, which does these calculations, where you can also outline transportation routes, and then have, as you put it, also in use either the fuel consumption or the distance. A second option that exists where Westernacher has a cooperation on with ShipZero is to have a direct integration of ShipZero system with SAP Transportation Management, so that also the transport manager can directly, when creating the transport order, see what the CO2 emissions will be. And this has also the advantage that the primary data is increased to a maximum, so that you can see how much is actually coming then from distance, for example, or what is just an average calculation based on fuel consumption. Another question, perhaps to you, Viraj. Are the tokens represented in SAP by new material ID?
So in this case, and I think this is also related to another question about, buying recycled materials which have an additional cost. Can this be incorporated in the product cost calculation in SAP? So yeah, again, the way you model materials in SAP depends on your business processes. Typically in a situation where the materials are the process itself is agnostic to the origin of the material. Let's say you are making pulp from wood chips. Doesn't really matter where the wood chips come from. They all come into a big pile and you process them in a way. And in this case, typically then the organization would model this as a single material, and there would not be any, let's say, segregate a separate material code for tracking which is the sustainable part and which is the conventional part. But in other instances where, let's say, it's a chemical industry and perhaps the source or the origin has an impact on the molecular structure, and it's important for the process to know which is which, there perhaps it is modeled as separate material codes. And then depending on how you are doing this in the ERP system, this can then be modeled in a similar way in Green Token. So you would basically map the sustainable material that you have in Green Token in order to have this being traced.
Yeah. Another question that was asked is, what is the trigger in SAP to alert Green Token? And here the answer is that as we have an integration with your ERP system, as soon as an inbound transaction is happening, Green Token will create a token dedicated to this. So whenever you have, so to say, a material coming in, so let's say the purchase order is in, and then the material is created within your ERP system, a token, and therefore the digital twin would be created for this. And then it's, so to say, up in your system and connected to this. Someone asked, does this mean that also all our non-sustainable, non-certified materials are flowing through Green Token? So effectively all of our material movements. Viraj, can you answer this?
Yes. So in general, you don't need to move anything through Green Token where there is no sustainability, let's say, attributes involved. So it's not a reflection of your, let's say, entire material movements processes. It's only a small subset of the materials where you need to track the sustainability information. So any materials that have nothing to do with this, you can skip them, so you don't need to bring them into Green Token. And this is also, there was another question here about, okay, via blockchain, you can guarantee traceability, but does that imply that the exact input factors will be visible for end users? Because we don't want to reveal the exact consumptions to our customers. So, okay, so this is a good question, because, with traceability and visibility also comes the question of privacy and, data security. So in this case, when it comes to the attributes involved, we can set or configure the visibility that we want to achieve for that specific attribute. And let's say if we want to keep some attribute as a private, then that will only be visible within the organization. And this can also be used as a standalone mode solution, where you are not making any of your data visible to any other company, but you are still capturing all of the information, so that when you have an audit and you need to supply the required information, you can use Green Token to download all of these transactions, and so you still benefit from having this information being captured, whilst not necessarily making everything visible to everyone.
Right. Another question that came in is, what about the pricing of SAP Green Token and how that works? Here, right now, the pricing is that it is paid on a record level. So there are certain brackets and groups or t-shirt sizes of records, and each record is then paid, and records meaning inbound and outbound transactions. So anything going into your system, so to say, and leaving it. So whenever a token is created and when it leaves your organization. Yeah. No intra-group or intra-company token movements are considered here. So it's purely in and out. Let me see. What else do we have?
Okay, so there's a question about conversion factors. So how are the conversion factors for our assets maintained? Can we fix them per asset or per product grade, and renew them every quarter or every year? So I'm assuming this is referring to the conversion process that we saw earlier. So within Green Token, you can model this conversion ratios to say, X amount of raw material produces Y quantity of the finished product. And what this is doing essentially is letting the system know how to convert the tokens. So if I have a stock of 100 tons of a particular raw material, when I convert it to a finished product, how much quantity should I expect? And this is basically the let's say a simplified version of your bill of materials that would be in the ERP system. I don't know if there is a need to change these every time, but let's say within your industry, if these conversion ratios are changing over time, maybe because of a change in recipe, you could always amend the recipes in Green Token. But this will not have any retro impact. So any transactions going forward would then use the new recipe, and anything prior to that would use the old conversion ratios.
Looking at time, I think we have sufficient time for one last question, and that was referencing the wood chip example. If half of our chips come from a sustainable source but are exactly like the non-sustainable, how do they flag the amount of sustainable chips without a duplicate material ID? Perhaps, Viraj, you can also share a bit on that.
Yeah, so this is where the inbound transactions come into the picture. So the inbound transactions need a a way of identifying which stock is sustainable versus which is conventional. And in this case, this would depend on the particular situation of the company. Perhaps you have certain vendors who are only providing sustainable wood chips, others are only providing conventional wood chips, or perhaps you have some vendors which are providing a mix. Now, assuming that these vendors are also on Green Token, this would already be considered when the tokens get transferred. But if the suppliers are offline partners, so they are not on Green Token, then this information needs to be modeled when we feed the inbound transactions in Green Token. And that logic will then depend on your specific situation. So how to tag which quantity is sustainable would then be case by case. And the material ID, again, in this case, you could use the same material ID if that's how you are currently processing it. Everything goes in the same, let's say, big box and so on. So it's flexible enough with the
with the recipe, you also then have the chance to identify how much of your chips that you have now converted are actually sustainable and non-sustainable. So if you want to learn more about this and EUDR requirements, Green Token is capable of being conformative to EUDR and European Deforestation-Free Products Regulation. So that works. We also have a demo in place for this and plan also a webinar to share more on this. But that is actually a very good solution that covers this together with SAP Ariba for the risk evaluation and mitigation actions. SAP actually covers this. Looking at the time, we are over it. Thank you very much for your participation. And if you have follow-up questions, want to discuss more on this, please feel free to reach out to us. We are very happy to support you on this. Thank you.
Thank you.